This is Zebulon. He likes to shoot guns on his own property in rural Tennessee.
Anytime we deal with a call that has to do with a gun, I'm going to take it off your side, okay?
No.
Yes.
Well, if that's what you're going to do, then I'm saying it's not okay as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, well, we're going to take it off your side.
This is his neighbor who doesn't like hearing Zebulon shoot his guns, so he calls the cops and tells them he heard gunshots on his neighbor's property.
It's an ongoing dispute about the property line, and he can't stay off me, and I've asked him to stay off me, so I'll come out here and was just going to put up a fence. I've not said anything to him, and he come out there and stood behind that van right yonder, and I assume he shot up in the air.
He didn't see them, but he assumes bullets were fired into the air. The cops go onto Zebulon's property where he's mowing his field.
At any point, did you fire your weapon up in the air, sir?
No.
Okay. Why would we get a call that said that you had?
Whenever I started my mower a minute ago, all my chickens was congregated underneath my van once again. So I dropped 2 shots in the ground to scare them all back to their coop. But it wasn't in the air. There was 2 shots fired, and it was in the ground. Okay. It clears them out fast.
They demand to see his ID, even though he told them he didn't fire any shots into the air or do anything illegal.
No, actually, I don't have an ID on me, but I'm not going to ID. I'm not giving you my name and date of birth because there's been no crime. I protect my Fourth Amendment.
The Fourth Amendment at this point gets put aside when,
And they arrest him for failing to ID while standing on his own property after no crime had even been committed that day.
He had called the local sheriffs. I didn't realize the effect that was going to have.
This is a story about 2 rural Tennessee neighbors who don't get along. One neighbor likes to farm, and the other neighbor, his name is Zebulon, likes to shoot guns on his property. I got a chance to talk with him about the incident. Here's what happened. Tell me more about this dispute between you and your neighbor. Is this something that had been going on for a long time?
We had gotten our mortgage here about 6 years ago. I had misunderstood the person who had sold me the place about a fence line. We have a 5-acre rectangle, and this neighbor has a 50-foot drive all the way down it, and then his property is behind our property off of the road, and that fence line goes all the way down the left side of our property. I had cleared it all out. I'd cut it all back, cut the trees down, cleared all the brush out. I didn't realize that the fence line didn't belong to me and it belonged to the neighbor to the side of me. He basically got mad. He eventually turned around and said, well, if you get hurt on my property, I don't want your wife to sue me. And I took that as an insult because no matter where, if I hurt myself, no matter what property it's on, my wife is not the type to sue somebody. So after that, I realized, he had a certain way of talking to people. And whenever I give him that same energy, he 100% couldn't stand it. So years go by.
On August 8th of 2025, officers with the Macon County, Tennessee Sheriff's Office responded to a fence line between these 2 neighbors after being called by the neighbor who likes to farm. The neighbor explained that he was installing new fencing on his property when he heard gunshots coming from Zebulon's property.
So I would come out here and was just going to put up a fence. I've not said anything to him.
He admitted that he did not see Zebulon shoot, but that he heard him shoot.
He come out there and stood behind that van right yonder, and I assume he shot up in the air. But you can see his little target sitting right down there. It's directly in line with us. He shoots every friggin' day we come out here. Okay. If we're outside, he's out here shooting. And it's a constant agitation with him.
I got you.
He said he assumes that Zebulon shot up into the air, though he admitted that he didn't actually see him do it because he was standing on the other side of a van. The neighbor complains that Zebulon is shooting just about every day.
He wants to shoot guns while we're sitting over on the porch. It's pretty stupid.
Yeah.
But with no backstop.
He says this has been going on for 5 years, and they haven't even spoken to each other for the last 2 or 3.
We're down here fencing, and he's out there popping off rounds. I'm going much farther. This has been going for 5 years.
I got you.
We ain't spoken 2 or 3, so.
Okay.
But it never ends with him.
I got you. You got your ID with you, sir?
I do.
Perfect.
The officer asked the neighbor for his ID, and he provides it. Then he acknowledges that this is probably just going to make it worse, which, as you'll see, it does.
This is probably just going to make it worse.
You still can't be out here doing that.
It's got to get documented somewhere or another that this is going on.
So this neighbor's complaint to law enforcement is that for the past 5 years, that Zebulon has been shooting guns on his own property, which has continuously agitated him, and that they haven't spoken in 2 or 3 years, and that the most recent gunshots he heard were from that day, and though he assumes that the gun was fired into the air, he didn't witness it, nor did he explain any other basis for his assumption. He didn't allege any sort of altercation or threats by the neighbor involving guns or otherwise. He did express concern that Zebulon didn't shoot into a backstop, ironically complaining that he was shooting into the ground. In other words, for 5 years, his neighbor is shooting into the ground, which is perfectly legal, but it just so happens that on the day he decides to call the cops on his neighbor, he assumes he was shooting in the air, which he knows would be something illegal.
Has he said anything to you today, or?
No, we've not spoken to each other in 2 or 3 years.
I got you.
And despite this having been allegedly ongoing for 5 years, the neighbor failed to provide the officer, and nor did she ask, by the way, with any sort of video evidence of the shooting activity that would indicate that there is any sort of dangerous or illegal conduct occurring on Zebulon's property.
If you don't mind, go ahead and hop in your vehicle so we can talk to him.
She walks from the gravel roadway onto his property in his field towards him.
Hi there. Let's step over here and talk. It's right over here.
Well, let's get right this way. It's closer to the property. How are you? Good.
I'm doing all right.
Before any discussion takes place, a male police officer walks up, introduces himself as well as the female officer, and says that he needs to first disarm Zebulon of his pistol.
I'm Sergeant Everton. This is Sergeant Meyer. She's going to be the one dealing with you. Anytime we deal with a call that has to do with a gun, I'm going to take it off your side, okay?
No.
Yes.
Well, if that's what you're going to do, then I'm saying it's not okay as far as I'm concerned.
The officer ignores him. He places his hands on Zebulon, still standing on Zebulon's private property, and then he removes Zebulon's pistol from the holster, and then he's holding it in his right hand, pointed towards the ground. This occurs before the officers even explain the reason why they were there.
Okay, well, we're going to take it off your side.
All right.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the reason that we're here is we got a call about someone firing shots up in the air. Okay. So that's why there's so many of us coming out here.
Zebulon responded that there's no crimes being committed on his property.
And you said Everton and Meyer.
Sergeant Meyer.
Well, there's no crimes being committed here. So
Then, while standing on this man's property, holding his gun that they claimed they weren't there to take, the male deputy then responds, "We're not saying that you committed a crime."
Look, we're not saying that you committed a crime.
No,
we're
I'm
just
just-
saying that
I'm just
we're just
making the
saying that
statement.
we've got to. I understand that,
right, yeah.
and I'm not an advocate to take people's guns. I'm not, but it's just an officer safety thing. As soon as we figure this out, if there's nothing wrong, I'm gonna give you your gun back. I'm cool with everybody having guns. I'm cool with everybody walking around with them.
The female deputy then asks Zebulon if at any point he fired his weapon up in the air, to which he immediately responds no.
At any point did you fire your weapon up in the air, sir?
No.
Okay. Why would we get a call that said that you had?
Whenever I started my mower a minute ago, all my chickens was congregated underneath my van once again. So I dropped 2 shots in the ground to scare them all back to their coop. But it wasn't in the air. There was 2 shots fired, and it was
Okay.
in the ground.
Okay.
It clears them out fast. It's not the first time I've done it.
I got you. I understand that completely.
Zebulon explained that the shots the neighbor heard were fired because when he started up his mower, a bunch of his chickens once again congregated underneath his van. So he fired 2 shots into the ground to scare them off back to their coop. She then asks him again if he fired a weapon up in the air.
So at no point you fired the weapon up in the air?
No.
Okay.
I would never fire a weapon up in the air.
He responds no, that he would never do that, and that he takes gun safety seriously to the extent that he takes training classes and had just recently finished one.
I just got finished with a training class this Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What goes up comes back down.
yeah, you don't ever fire a weapon. I just fired them off into the ground.
All right. You got your ID with you, sir?
I haven't committed any crime.
Sir, we're out here for a call for service.
I'm-
We have to identify everybody.
Now I wish I had a camera.
This is a great illustration about why you should not talk with the police, why you shouldn't allow them on your property. Not that these cops care about your rights not to talk with them or to exclude them from your property. They can lie to you, they can gaslight you, and they do it because they want to put you in a cage and ruin your life. Here, this guy was just minding his own business, mowing his field, and now he's surrounded by agents of his government interrogating him while holding his own firearm against his will on his own property.
And you are Vincent, and you are Woodard.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah. No, actually, I don't have an ID on me, but I'm not going to ID. I'm not giving you my name and date of birth because there's been no crime.
He expresses that he wants to protect his Fourth Amendment rights, but the female deputy responds that the Fourth Amendment at this point gets put aside.
I protect my Fourth Amendment.
The Fourth
I'll
Amendment at this point
okay.
gets put aside when, okay.
I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to resist, but I'm not going to ID.
Look,
I've done no crime.
Listen to me.
But I'm just telling you
understand-
everything.
I understand.
No, I'm glad that.
No,
I'm really glad.
Listen. We don't want to arrest you. Listen,
Okay.
I
Well, you don't want
want
to ID me either because I ain't committed no crime.
We have a right to ID you because we had a call for service out here.
No, sir.
You said that you fired shots off.
I didn't say that but she asked if I fired him in the air. So it doesn't matter if I fired shots out on my
So
own
we get a
property.
gun call. You see what I'm saying?
No.
We get a gun call.
No. Am
neighbor
I
dispute.
arrested? What am I arrested for?
Right
'Cause-
now you're detained.
Okay. Well, if I'm being arrested for not giving my
Right now
There's a
we're trying to
difference
give you.
between
Right now we're
detention
trying to
and
give you a chance to tell your side and try to ID you
I
that
did
way.
tell
That
myself, I'm
Okay.
not ID.
you're not IDing.
That's what I'm not refusing to ID, but until you give me a lawful reason as to why I have to ID,
Okay.
Because we got a call for service. And we
that
have
call
to-
for service is not a lawful reason to ID, sir.
It is.
No, it ain't, because anybody could call and make anything up. If I hadn't have shot those, fired those shots, and he called it up and lied to y'all,
We still go get his ID too.
So what if
I
you're
already got
lying that you
his.
shot it in the ground and instead you shooting at them?
I wasn't. But that's burden of proof is on them. It's not burden of proof for me to prove I'm innocent, is it?
That's why we're out
Well,
here.
I'm
We're
just
trying to
making a
figure out what's
statement.
going
It's
on.
not. You got cameras on your eyeglasses too?
Yeah.
No, I just saw the little circles, and I didn't know if it was those.
Those are blenders.
He expresses that he wants to protect his Fourth Amendment rights. There are three basic types of police versus citizen encounters to be aware of in order to understand Fourth Amendment rights and implications. Consensual encounters, where the Fourth Amendment isn't implicated at all because it's a voluntary consensual conversation where the citizen is free to leave at any time, at least theoretically. Then there's the Terry stop or investigatory detention, where the citizen is temporarily not free to leave, which does implicate the Fourth Amendment and therefore requires the objective existence of reasonable suspicion. And then there's the full-blown arrest, which requires the objective existence of probable cause. So we first look to categorize the encounter into one of these three situations in order to understand the rights at play. Here, the officers skipped right past the consensual encounter stage and went right to the Terry stop.
Well, no crime's been committed, so I don't know quite what to say.
Let me explain like the reason for IDing.
I'm not really wanting to hear it. I'm really not. Are you going to arrest me for not for failure to ID? Because that's a secondary charge. You got to have a crime first, and I have not committed any crime.
How do we know this was a detention as opposed to a consensual encounter? Generally, police may approach people in a consensual encounter and ask for ID, but that individual is at all times free to leave and walk away, unless he is being detained.
I've tried to explain to you why we have to ID you, sir.
I'm trying
You're
to
not
explain
hearing
to you
me.
why I'm protecting my Fourth Amendment right.
And
Had I known that it was going to be this way, I would have went and got my phone camera so I could have recorded this.
You can always confirm whether or not you're being detained by asking, "Am I free to go?" Here, the officers made it clear that Zebulon was being detained right off the bat. He even asked at one point if he was free to go and was told that he was not.
Am I free to go?
Not right now, sir.
Okay.
No.
Okay. What crime are you detaining me for?
It's an investigation.
Okay. Should we move off of my property because y'all are currently trespassing and I'm rescinding any?
No, we're not.
Again.
Okay, I'm just
Call for
rescinding any
service.
invite or any type of y'all are on here because of y'all and y'all's lawful orders, not because of being invited and not because this is casual.
10-4.
I understand, sir.
Therefore, there's not going to be much dispute that this was a detention, and therefore reasonable suspicion was required. So for this to be a lawful detainment, an officer needs specific, objective facts, not just a hunch, indicating that a crime or violation has occurred. The officer must be able to clearly explain observable evidence that justifies the detention. No hunches, or in this case assumptions, are allowed, including unsupported intuition, such as in this case the neighbor or the officers saying, well, we don't know for a fact that he didn't shoot into the air. Who knows, he may have shot into the air, even though he denies it and no evidence has been presented.
Look, we don't want to have to take you to jail.
I don't want to go to jail. But if you're going to arrest me on something that is a secondary offense when you actually have no original crime, then that's just something I'm going to have to fight in court. Isn't that what you always say? No roadside court. Just do it after the fact, and if I have to sue the county, then I sue the county. No big deal.
Well, we have to see who we're messing with. We have to run their IDs, see who you are, you say you are.
Just because somebody give you a call to service doesn't mean I have to surrender my Fourth Amendment right. It does not.
It's not a Fourth Amendment right.
No,
we've come out here for a reason.
It's, right now, this is an investigation. You can investigate. If you have proof that shots fired. Matter of fact, you didn't even say shots fired at him. You said shots fired at him. You said, how in the world do we know, since you said they were shots fired, that you didn't shoot them at him? She didn't even say shot at him. She said shot in the air. Shot at him would come up on your part.
You said that you shot in the ground. How do we know if you shot in the ground or shot up in the air? Because they called in and said you shot up in the air. How do we know if you shooting at
well, then they need proof, or else they're falling false out. They're falling. Are you gonna let me answer? Either they are filing false allegations, or your investigation will prove otherwise. But until you have the proof, the burden of proof is not on me to prove that I didn't shoot in the air. Now I'm sitting here telling you I'm not a moron, so I didn't shoot in the air.
Okay. We're not saying you're a moron, but
no, anybody that does is though.
We either need an ID or name and date of birth.
Put your hands behind your back.
Yes, ma'am.
Here, the officers gave the commonly used justification that, well, we received a call, so we need your ID. That may be department policy to obtain the ID of anyone that you interact with at a call, but it also may or may not be constitutional justification under the Fourth Amendment. That would depend on whether or not the call involves any specific objective facts indicating that any crime or violation has been committed. That's why I argue that it's a good idea for police officers to just use their own common sense a little bit before they escalate a situation where no underlying crime has been committed to an arrest for failure to ID. They should just stop and ask themselves before putting handcuffs on someone, is this a consensual encounter? If not, what is my reasonable suspicion? What crime am I actually investigating here? And what relevance does this ID that I want so badly have to the investigation of that crime? Here, had those common sense questions been considered, all of what's about to happen could have been avoided. I mean, at this point, how does obtaining Zebulon's ID prove or disprove whether or not he fired a shot into the air?
I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
I'm tired of coming home and somebody shooting a gun every time I come back here. I've been ignoring it for years.
Yeah.
But now this is the first time I've been out in the
So
driveway.
you was out here in the driveway?
Yeah, I was
driving
out there.
driving T-post.
I stayed right there where the property line went back. But now to be honest, I don't know that he shot back here. I'd say he shot in the air. But it's still.
All right. Well, let me talk to Chief and then.
The neighbor said he didn't witness it. He assumed it. Zebulon gave his side of the story and he said that he didn't do it. He shot into the ground. It's not like his identity is some mystery that needs to be solved. They know who he is. He's the guy who owns the property they're standing on. They just want that physical ID because it's like crack for police officers.
Put your hand together like you're praying, so that way it doesn't pinch you.
And what am I being arrested for?
Right now, failure to identify.
Okay, failure to identify is a secondary offense. You need an original charge.
Disorderly
No.
conduct.
There's no disorderly conduct on private property. I didn't do anything. And you don't have proof that I did.
Right together.
Yeah,
more.
you are being
Little more.
disorderly when you're not.
No, I'm not.
When you're not doing what we're asking.
No, that's not disorderly. Disorderly. Can you even be the complainant in a disorderly, or do you have to have somebody else?
You absolutely can.
Okay.
All right, do you have anything else on you, sir?
Yes, I got a magazine
Okay.
in this pocket right here.
All right.
Or I'm not giving you permission to take any of
Well,
my
you're
belongings.
in custody right now,
Okay,
so
I'm just
put
letting you know.
incident
Well,
to arrest.
That's a false arrest.
All right. All prerogative.
No, it's law.
Okay.
You either follow the law or you don't. You're supposed to be here upholding your oath to the Constitution.
You're right.
Well, this is a Fourth Amendment oath violation. You don't have a crime.
We're gonna call for service.
Doesn't matter if you get call for service. Any loony can call you up and tell you to go
All right, sir, come on.
search somebody.
Yeah.
Mine's the first car over here.
Well, they have to get to respond. You can't work this way off anonymous, can you?
I said, well, we don't know if you're shooting at them, shooting up in the air. That's why we're out here for a call.
He refuses to, or whenever I left, he was refusing to ID himself. He says he's not committed a crime. We're violating his Fourth Amendment. I took his weapon off of his side whenever I got here because it's a safety issue. He's even claimed that he's fired off rounds, but he claims he shot him in the ground.
First car up here.
The female officer, Sergeant Rachel Meyer, then handcuffs and arrests Zebulon and places him in the rear of one of the police
Have a
cars.
seat. I got it. I'll put it up here with me.
Once Zebulon is secured in the police cruiser, the officers all gather around to discuss the situation.
I'll give you the firearm that come off his side. I just put it in my passenger floorboard. That way it was out of play.
All right.
They speculate that Zebulon could be intoxicated, and one of the officers says, well, that's disorderly conduct.
Oh, you're identified. I'm pretty sure he's intoxicated. I can smell it on him.
I can
So.
smell it.
Well, I mean,
Well, there you
it's
go.
disorderly too, isn't it? He said he can't be on private property.
I'm not going to stand out here and argue it. It's too hot.
He's intoxicated.
We tried to be nice and give him a beating.
If you don't cooperate with the investigation, you can only go off what your witness says.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I mean, I know what.
not much option. Reckless endangerment. Exactly.
That's my whole thing. Is we've got the reckless endangerment. Kelly's, fire off.
I was going to say you can talk to him or whatever.
However, under Tennessee law, to commit disorderly conduct requires first that a suspect be in a public place, which clearly Zebulon was not, since he was on his own property at all relevant times. I mean, Tennessee is still America, even in rural Tennessee, and I believe that you are allowed to drink on your own property and be intoxicated on your own property if you want to. However, there was no evidence beyond these officers just speculating, looking for any way to jam Zebulon up.
So he owns here, and I assume you own
Yeah,
there.
right there, the corner. They own 5 acres down the side of us. Down the side of me.
Where does he live? Does he live up there?
Yeah, lives in the double wide red hunter.
What's his name? Do you even know?
Zebulon Passmore.
Okay.
He moved in here about 5 years ago. That's about all I know about him. I don't know nothing about him.
So what kind of happened today? I know you probably didn't tell Brian, but I was just trying to kind of get.
Today, you're gonna go back the whole way. I mean, it's
Let's do
been an
that.
ongoing deal.
I understand that it's probably been a issue.
Yeah,
or whatever.
well, today, of course, I come out here every time I go home. He does something, just have just a finger in your ass, basically. So I come out here today, and he mows a little further every week. Well, I got tired of it. I went and got my fence post and all that stuff. And I was going to put a fence up here like I did up there and just let it freaking grow up. It seems to be the best issue.
He said he fired 2 shots into the ground to scare chickens back away from his vehicle. So, had he just identified himself, it could have been a report and we'd be on our way. But
Well, we don't know if that's really what he did.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're trying to explain.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain to him.
How do we know if you?
He said I was calling him a moron.
what do you need to give to us, sir?
The van keys. You can't leave the house with the kids.
All right, are they on the mower?
No, they're on me.
Okay. I'll get them and I'll give them to her.
I ain't cleared it or nothing else. It's exactly how it was.
Hold that. Clear.
That's clear. You know how that goes.
That's actually cleared it in a better spot.
That'll be all right.
Where are the keys at, sir? Right there.
Have you told me? Have y'all figured anything out yet?
Yes.
Okay.
We get these to his wife down there at the house.
He can put them in his property.
He said he needs to get them to his wife.
Oh.
We're not going to be liable because he's going to try to sue us already, so it goes his property.
All right.
I obtained a copy of the affidavit of complaint, and even after reading it, it's still unclear to me. Sergeant Meyer doesn't actually even specifically allege that Zebulon fired shots into the air. She just states that she was told that by witnesses. But that's not actually true. She did not clarify the fact that the complainant/neighbor admitted that he did not witness shots being fired into the air, but he just assumed it. That's a material, important fact that is being omitted from what the court is being provided in her affidavit. In fact, it's so important that if it was included, there wouldn't be any probable cause at all, and the arrest would be invalid on its face. But since she made this misrepresentation, the reviewing judge concluded that probable cause existed and the prosecution proceeded. Clearly, Sergeant Meyer has no respect for the Fourth Amendment. Sergeant Meyer knew there was no reckless endangerment. She admitted to the other officers that the only available evidence was that Zebulon fired 2 shots into the ground to scare the chickens, and that had he just identified himself, they could have been on their way. Meyer then walks back to where the neighbor is standing, where he's once again telling the officers that he didn't actually see Zebulon shoot into the air, but that he's basically just angry that Zebulon is out there shooting on his own property every day.
And then when we come out here, Julio drove up. I was going to drive in fence post, and Julio drove up, and he come and stood back there at the back of his van right yonder, and he shot. We heard 3 shots. I'd say they was in the air. I'm not saying he shot at us. I'm not going to go there. But he shoots back this way every day. You can see his little target on the home front yonder. I mean, every day we're home, he comes back here and shoots. Or he stands back there at that van and shoots that target. Now, it's kind of in line with my property. There's no backstop. It's a constant agitation.
The neighbor then states that he probably should be more tolerant of the fact that Zebulon likes to exercise his Second Amendment rights on his own property, but that he's not.
Coming out here and shooting air, me standing in my driveway is about all I can stand. I probably should have tolerated more, but I don't know.
And he also acknowledges that calling the cops on his neighbor is probably the worst thing he could have done.
I think this is the worst thing I probably could have done. But I'm tired of it. You know what I mean? I need it on record that.
Well, unfortunately, if we don't start doing something, it's going to get worse. And I'm not saying that it won't.
Yeah, exactly.
But at least you've done your part.
The cops appear to be kind of on the same side with the neighbor, as if they've teamed up to help him.
To try to prevent it going to the next step.
Yeah, I don't believe it will.
You just gonna bring it down there for me?
What's that?
His gun.
I'll give it to you.
All right.
They ultimately decide to charge him with reckless endangerment and failure to identify. It's unclear what probable cause exists for the reckless endangerment charge, where the complainant admittedly did not see it and no evidence existed that it occurred, and the suspect denied it.
So what is it I'm being arrested for?
Right now, failure to identify disorderly conduct.
What happened after you got arrested?
After I got arrested, they basically, you can hear some of the car ride where she didn't give my wife the keys, and at that point, you had been lied to, and I took it personally. So the ride in was somewhat, aggravated.
They gotta go with us, man.
Huh?
They gotta go with us, whatever property you have on you.
She's not going to be able to leave the house with the kids. She has 3 kids and all the car seats are in the van, and the only way she can make any kind of move is with the van. So you're sitting here telling me that, wow, that's very interesting. Can you quote the law that says that has to happen, or is that just officer discretion?
That's going to be discretion at this
That's going to be
point.
officer discretion, thank you. So you purposely make it where the person who's going to have to come to the jail to get me can't, because they don't have the keys to the vehicle to transport 3 children under the age of 8. Whenever you ask to get them off of me, if they were on me or the mower, Do you remember telling me whether or not then you would get her the keys when you took the keys off of me? Because your body camera is going to say one way or the other.
Yep. What do you need to give to her, sir?
The van keys. She can't leave the house with the kids.
All right, are they on the mower?
No, they're on me.
Okay. I'll get them and I'll give them to her.
But I guess it's okay for officers to lie to civilians. It's just not okay for civilians to lie to officers, right? And at your discretion, you chose to make sure that it is as hard as possible for me to get back home after you took me from my home for no crime, all because I wouldn't identify myself. Y'all really are addicted to ID, ain't you?
When Sergeant Meyer arrested Zebulon, obviously there was no arrest warrant at that time. If you'll recall the little diagram I made, this is where she skipped over the Terry stop portion of the diagram and went all the way over to the arrest portion. An arrest requires more than just reasonable suspicion, but the greater standard of probable cause. According to the Sixth Circuit applicable to Tennessee, a warrantless arrest is only reasonable under the Fourth Amendment where there is probable cause to believe that the suspect committed a criminal offense. More specifically, an officer has probable cause for an arrest if the facts and circumstances within the officer's knowledge would lead a reasonable officer to believe that the suspect has committed, is committing, or is about to commit an offense. Because probable cause is an objective standard, courts require concrete and articulable facts from which a reasonable officer can reasonably infer criminal conduct. In assessing probable cause, courts look to the totality of the circumstances confronted by the officer at the time of the arrest. Here, what they were investigating objectively was reckless endangerment, which they ultimately charged Zebulon with. So looking at the totality of the circumstances that were known to the officers at the time of the arrest, were there any concrete and articulable facts indicating that this offense was committed? Under Tennessee law, a person commits reckless endangerment if he recklessly engages in conduct that places or may place another person in imminent danger of death or serious bodily injury. Here, what objective, concrete facts did the officers know at the time of the arrest? The neighbor, who was the complainant, said he heard gunshots fired on Zebulon's property and that he did not see them being fired and did not know which direction they were fired towards. He assumed they were fired into the air, but he didn't know. He further told them that Zebulon was shooting on his property pretty much every day over the past 5 years, and that it agitated him. The only other thing that the officers knew at the time of the arrest is Zebulon's explanation that he did not fire any shots into the air, that he was at all times being safe, and that he fired shots into the ground, which was completely legal on his own property. The totality of these facts that were known to these officers did not indicate that the neighbor or any other person was in imminent danger of death or serious bodily injury as a result of Zebulon shooting on his property. However, the judge who signed off on the arrest did not know the actual facts that were indeed known to the arresting officer at the time, because she concealed those facts by omitting the important acknowledgement by the neighbor that he only assumed the shots were fired into the air, but he didn't actually know. In her affidavit, she made it sound to the judge like it was a he said, she said sort of deal where there was disagreement between witnesses that potentially required a trial to decide. But it never was, which is probably why the neighbor never even showed up at the court date. The point of this whole thing was never to actually convict Zebulon. It was just to make him suffer the humiliation, the expense, and the hassle of an arrest and prosecution.
He took an oath to the Constitution, and the Fourth Amendment says there's no reason to give search, seizure, papers, none of that. There was no law being broken. Had there been a law being broken, and you stated that, then I would have given you that information, but you wasn't stating the original charge. You were just stating that you were going to arrest me for not ID, failure to ID. And then whenever I told you failure to ID the secondary charge, that's when you started him hauling around. Nothing that I have done actually even falls under the statute of disturbing. So I don't know why y'all brought that up after the fact. The call wasn't for that. Y'all didn't say that. When I asked you why you're arresting me, you didn't say that. And then after you have me in the car, you come back and you're like, oh yeah, that's what it is.
As for the charge of resisting and obstructing for failure to ID, I don't see any requirement for an ID to be produced under the wording of that statute that they charged him under. And I haven't seen any explanation or indication that the officers actually needed his ID in order to investigate the neighbor's allegations of shooting into the air.
Is it Officer Meyer?
Yes.
Are you wearing your seatbelt, Officer Meyer?
No, sir, I'm not.
No, you're not. Do you think that that's safe? Do you think it's safe to not be wearing your seatbelt, Officer Meyer? Is it legal for law enforcement officers to not have to wear their safety belts? Are they above the law? So even though on a daily you would pull people over and write them tickets for not wearing their safety belt, you feel above the law to where you can just ride around all the time without one? Is that how that works?
Despite the fact that Sergeant Meyer said to her colleagues that it wasn't a big deal, that he should have just ID'd, that it wasn't illegal for him to shoot into the ground to scare his chickens, Zebulon basically faced the full wrath of that local criminal justice system, where he got arrested and gets this bond so high that it makes him unlikely to be able to afford to even bond out of jail before trial.
All right, come on out, sir. He has a holster on his head. The firearms with me.
After I got there, she basically handed me over to somebody else, and then we went into the front of holding. One of the people who work in booking who had just gotten a job there recently, her name was Spanky, and she used to work at the local Walmart, and I knew Spanky. So when Spanky turned around and looked at me and seen me standing there, first thing out of her mouth is, "What are you doing here?" And I basically said, "Yeah, what am I doing here?" And I had went through the whole spiel with her about the wrongful arrest and this, that, and the other. And then they had brought in another person into booking. So they ended up sticking me in one of the holding cells in booking. And I'd sat there probably a couple of hours. And then one of the officers in booking had come up and asked me my name. I hadn't at this point realized that any of this had been blown out of proportion to the way that it was. I had thought that it was going to be $500, $250, whatever, so forth, so on. It wasn't until being released that I had realized that it was a $25,000 with a $2,500 get out. That really changed everything. For Sergeant Myers, she hadn't actually wrote up that report whenever she had arrested me. That report wasn't written up until hours later. And then that was whenever I realized that it had been changed from, something about being arrested for failure to ID to now it was reckless endangerment and obstructing resisting. I learned that basically whenever I signed out with the bail bondsman.
How long were you in jail?
I have been told since I was only in jail for 4 hours that it wasn't like, oh, well, it didn't really hurt you that bad. You was just in jail for 4 hours. But what had hurt was the fact that my wife had to go back to work the next morning. We don't have any family around us. We homeschool. She had to have me out that night because she had to go to work the next morning, and I had to be there to take care of our children. A lot of people are like, oh, well, it's no big deal. You just had to spend 4 hours in jail. What's the big deal? Well, it kind of goes more toward the lawfare side of them upping the charges and making it $2,500 because they fully intended on keeping me in jail for 3 weeks. I mean, what are they going to do? Ruin her 18-year career and our 6-year mortgage because they want to keep me in their jail for 3 weeks? I mean, I guess if I had done that, then they'd have been lawyers jumping all over me like chickens on June bugs wanting to litigate. But I learned a valuable lesson. Don't ever tell officers that you're going to sue them. Even if you plan on it, just don't say it.
And what ended up happening to the criminal charges? Are they still pending?
No, we had gotten a lawyer, and that had cost us another $3,500. Basically, what happens, we showed up the first time, and he said, okay, now we've showed up and we've set our case. The DA is going to do his subpoenas. this is the first time that he's been introduced to it. He's going to familiarize himself with it, and then he's going to come back with what he come back with. So we showed up at the next court date. They brought me back there, and then he's like, I never subpoenaed him. So we're just going to dismiss it on something like, I think it's called null pros. And they say that they can bring it up in the future, which I don't understand that. But I've been trying to figure that out. But except for that, I was told it was dismissed.
The paperwork states that the alleged victim failed to appear. Though, as we know, had the alleged victim appeared, the truth would have been revealed that he witnessed nothing, that the entire prosecution was nothing but retaliation for Zebulon exercising his Fourth Amendment rights. If any Tennessee lawyers would be interested in representing Zebulon and filing a civil lawsuit, he is interested in doing so. He just can't afford it.
I'm more than willing to litigate. I'm more than willing to take on the battle, to fight the whole thing. We are actively looking for it. We are wanting to pursue it 100%.
So if you'd be interested, reach out to me and I can put you in touch. Has anything else happened between you and the neighbor?
Nothing has happened between me and him.
Do you have a GoFundMe set up?
Yes, there's one on the Civil Servant Accountability page. That's our page. I was hoping to pass it forward for some type of litigation of some sorts. I want what happened to me and the way that I go about trying to bring light to it and shine the light on it. I just want it to help. I want to go forward and be able to have it where lawyers will look at it and say, well, over here in this case, this was decided, so we need to go in the correct direction.
Either they are filing false allegations or your investigation will prove otherwise. But until you have the proof, the burden of proof is not on me to prove that I didn't shoot in the air. Now, I'm sitting here telling you I'm not a moron, so I didn't shoot in the air.
If I hear anything else, I'll update, and you can follow along by subscribing both here and at the blog at thecivilrightslawyer.com. You can follow me on X at JohnBryanESQ. Remember, our rights don't end where your fear begins. Freedom is scary. Deal with it.